In a world where royal news often centers on protocol and tradition, sometimes it takes the innocent smile of a young princess to remind us what truly matters. When Princess Catherine shared a simple photograph on a quiet Tuesday morning, she had no idea it would spark a global wave of joy that would reach millions of hearts across the world. This wasn't just another royal photo opportunity or carefully staged moment for the cameras. This was something far more precious and authentic. The image captured Princess Charlotte in a moment so genuine, so filled with pure happiness, that it immediately reminded everyone why the royal family holds such a special place in people's hearts. But this story goes much deeper than a single photograph. It's about a little girl growing up in the most extraordinary circumstances, learning to balance being both a regular child and a future member of the British royal family. What makes this moment so special isn't just Charlotte's radiant smile or her natural charm that seems to light up every room she enters. It's the story behind the photo, the careful love and attention that Princess Catherine puts into sharing these precious glimpses of her children's lives, and how one simple act of a mother wanting to share her daughter's joy created a ripple effect of happiness around the globe. This is the story of how authenticity, love, and genuine moments can still cut through all the noise of modern life and touch hearts in the most unexpected ways. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage, casting gentle golden rays across the breakfast table where the Wales family gathered for their daily routine. Princess Catherine sat quietly, watching her 3 children as they prepared for another day. Prince George was carefully organising his school books. Princess Charlotte was humming softly while eating her porridge, and little Prince Louis was already showing signs of his mischievous energy, trying to balance his spoon on his nose. It was these ordinary moments that Catherine treasured most. Despite their extraordinary circumstances, she and William had worked tirelessly to create a sense of normalcy for their children. The cottage, their private retreat in Windsor Great Park, had become their sanctuary where royal protocols could take a back seat to family life. Charlotte, now 8 years old, had grown into a confident and spirited young girl who seemed to possess the perfect blend of her mother's grace and her father's warmth. Her hair caught the morning light as she chatted animatedly about the school project she was working on. She was telling her mother about how she had chosen to write about flowers native to Britain, and her enthusiasm was absolutely infectious. Catherine watched her daughter's animated gestures and bright expressions with the kind of maternal pride that transcends royal titles and public expectations. This was simply a mother watching her daughter discover the world around her with wonder and excitement. Charlotte had always been naturally photogenic, but it wasn't her camera-ready smile that captured Catherine's heart in these moments. It was the genuine joy that radiated from her daughter when she talked about things she was passionate about. As the children finished their breakfast and gathered their things for school, Catherine noticed how Charlotte carefully helped Lewis with his backpack, showing the kind of natural leadership and caring nature that seemed to come so naturally to her. William often joked that Charlotte had inherited her great-grandmother's sense of duty, but Catherine could see it was much more than that. Charlotte genuinely cared about others and had a natural instinct to help wherever she could. The school run was always an adventure with 3 children, but Catherine had learned to cherish even these chaotic moments. As they walked to the car, Charlotte slipped her hand into her mother's, a simple gesture that never failed to make Catherine's heart swell with love. These were the moments that reminded her why protecting her children's privacy and normalcy was so important. During the drive to school, Charlotte chatted about her upcoming dance recital and how nervous she was about performing in front of everyone. Catherine listened carefully, offering gentle encouragement while silently marveling at how her daughter was learning to navigate the balance between confidence and humility that would serve her well throughout her life. After dropping the children at school, Catherine returned to Adelaide Cottage feeling particularly reflective. The morning had been so perfectly ordinary, yet filled with those small moments of joy that make family life so precious. She found herself thinking about how quickly Charlotte was growing up and how important it was to capture these fleeting moments of childhood innocence. Catherine had always been passionate about photography, finding it to be one of the few creative outlets that allowed her to step away from her royal duties and simply be herself. She had documented countless precious moments of her children's lives, but most of these remained private, shared only within their immediate family. The decision to share glimpses of their children with the public was never taken lightly. As she walked through their garden, Catherine noticed how the afternoon light was creating the most beautiful natural setting. The flowers Charlotte had been so enthusiastic about that morning were in full bloom, creating a backdrop that seemed almost magical. It was then that inspiration struck her. When Charlotte returned from school, perhaps they could spend some time in the garden together, and Catherine could capture some photographs of this special time in her daughter's life. The afternoon seemed to pass slowly, as Catherine found herself looking forward to Charlotte's return. There was something about her daughter's energy and natural grace that always translated beautifully in photographs. But more importantly, these photo sessions had become special bonding moments between mother and daughter. When the children finally arrived home from school, Charlotte immediately launched into detailed stories about her day. She had received praise from her teacher for her flower project, and her excitement was absolutely contagious. Catherine suggested they spend some time in the garden, and Charlotte's face lit up with delight. She loved these special times with her mother, especially when Catherine brought out her camera. As they made their way to the garden, Catherine couldn't help but notice how Charlotte's natural confidence seemed to shine even brighter when she was in familiar surroundings. The garden at Adelaide Cottage had become Charlotte's personal playground, a place where she could be completely herself without any concern for royal expectations or public scrutiny. The setting couldn't have been more perfect. The flowers were at their peak bloom, the light was soft and warm, and Charlotte's mood was absolutely radiant. As Catherine began setting up her camera, she watched her daughter explore the garden with the kind of uninhibited joy that only children possess. This wasn't going to be a formal portrait session or a carefully orchestrated photo opportunity. This was simply a mother wanting to capture the essence of her daughter's happiness in this moment. Charlotte seemed to understand instinctively that this was going to be something special. Without any direction from her mother, she began interacting naturally with her surroundings, stopping to smell flowers, running her fingers along garden walls, and displaying the kind of genuine expressions that no amount of professional photography direction could ever recreate. As Catherine raised her camera and began taking the first few shots, she realized that something magical was happening. Charlotte wasn't posing or performing for the camera. She was simply being herself, and that authenticity was creating something truly beautiful. The photographs Catherine was capturing weren't just images, they were windows into the soul of a young girl who was growing up with grace, confidence, and an infectious joy for life. Little did Catherine know that one of the photographs she would take that afternoon would soon capture hearts around the world and remind everyone why authentic moments of childhood joy are so precious and rare in our increasingly complex world. The afternoon light continued to work its magic as Catherine and Charlotte settled into their impromptu photo session in the garden. What had started as a simple desire to capture a moment had evolved into something much more special. Charlotte moved through the garden with natural grace, and Catherine found herself amazed at how photogenic her daughter was, not because she was trying to be, but because her genuine happiness was radiating from within. Catherine had always believed that the best photographs happened when people forgot about the camera entirely, and that's exactly what was happening now. Charlotte was completely absorbed in exploring the garden, stopping to examine interesting flowers, chasing butterflies, and occasionally looking back at her mother with expressions of pure delight. Each click of the camera was capturing not just an image, but a feeling. As they moved deeper into the garden, Charlotte discovered a section where wildflowers had been allowed to grow naturally, creating an almost fairy tale-like setting. The combination of carefully cultivated royal gardens and these wilder areas reflected perfectly the balance Catherine and William were trying to achieve in their children's lives, respect for tradition combined with freedom to be themselves. Charlotte had always been drawn to flowers, perhaps inheriting her love of nature from both sides of her family. The Queen had been passionate about gardens, and Catherine herself found great peace in outdoor spaces. Watching Charlotte examine each bloom with careful attention, Catherine realized her daughter was developing her own relationship with the natural world that was uniquely her own. The camera captured Charlotte's expressions as she made these small discoveries. There was wonder in her eyes as she studied the intricate patterns of petals, concentration as she tried to identify different types of flowers, and pure joy when she found particularly beautiful blooms. These weren't staged expressions, but genuine reactions of a curious child exploring her world. Catherine moved quietly around the garden, careful not to interrupt Charlotte's natural exploration, but positioning herself to capture the best light and angles. Years of taking photographs of her children had taught her to anticipate moments before they happened, to recognize when Charlotte was about to break into her most radiant smile, or when she might pause in a particularly beautiful pose. The breakthrough moment came when Charlotte discovered a climbing rose that had grown higher than expected, its blooms creating a natural canopy overhead. As she reached up to gently touch one of the flowers, the afternoon sun created the most incredible backlighting, turning Charlotte's hair into a golden halo while illuminating her face with warm, soft light. Catherine held her breath as she raised the camera. This was one of those magical photography moments that couldn't be planned or recreated. Everything had aligned perfectly. The light, Charlotte's natural pose, her genuine expression of wonder, and the beautiful natural setting surrounding her. As Catherine pressed the shutter, she knew she had captured something truly special. But the magic didn't end with that single shot. Charlotte continued to move through the garden, and Catherine continued to follow, capturing image after image of her daughter's natural grace and joy. There were close-up shots that showed the detailed expressions on Charlotte's face, wider shots that captured her interacting with the garden environment, and candid moments where Charlotte forgot about the camera entirely. One particularly memorable sequence occurred when Charlotte noticed a butterfly that had landed on one of the roses. Her face lit up with delight as she slowly approached, careful not to frighten it away. Catherine was able to capture the entire interaction. Charlotte's initial excitement, her careful approach, and finally her gentle wonder as she observed the butterfly up close. These images told a complete story of childhood curiosity and respect for nature. As the afternoon progressed, Catherine noticed that Charlotte seemed to be growing even more confident and natural in front of the camera. It wasn't that she was performing or posing, but rather that she was becoming completely comfortable with having these special moments documented. She began to share more of herself with each shot, her personality shining through in ways that formal portraits could never capture. The garden setting continued to provide new opportunities for beautiful photographs. Charlotte climbed onto a low garden wall, balancing carefully while her dress caught in the gentle breeze. She sat among the flowers, creating natural compositions that looked effortless but were actually perfectly balanced. She ran along garden paths, her laughter captured mid-sound, creating images full of movement and life. Catherine found herself completely absorbed in the process of documenting this afternoon. Through her camera lens, she was seeing her daughter not just as her child, but as the remarkable individual Charlotte was becoming. Each photograph revealed different aspects of Charlotte's personality: her natural confidence, her gentle kindness, her curiosity about the world, and her infectious joy. As the light began to change with the approaching evening, Catherine realized she had captured hundreds of images throughout the afternoon. But as she reviewed them on her camera, one photo stood out from all the others. It was the shot she had taken when Charlotte reached for the climbing rose, with the perfect backlighting and Charlotte's expression of pure wonder and happiness. In that single image, Catherine could see everything she loved about her daughter, and everything she hoped the world would see in Charlotte as she grew older. There was innocence and joy, but also strength and confidence. There was respect for beauty and nature, but also the kind of natural grace that couldn't be taught or staged. Catherine knew immediately that this was more than just a family photograph. This was the kind of image that captured not just how Charlotte looked at this moment in time, but who she was as a person. It showed the world a genuine glimpse into the life of a young princess who was growing up with remarkable grace and authenticity. As they finally headed back toward the house, Charlotte skipping along beside her, Catherine found herself thinking about the power of authentic moments. In a world where so much seemed artificial or staged, there was something incredibly powerful about genuine expressions of joy and wonder. The photographs she had taken that afternoon weren't just documentation of Charlotte's childhood. They were reminders of the beauty that exists in simple, unguarded moments. Little did Catherine know that when she eventually chose to share one of these photographs with the world, it would touch hearts across the globe and remind everyone why authentic moments of childhood joy are so precious and important to preserve. That evening, after the children had been tucked into bed and the house had settled into peaceful quiet, Catherine sat in her private study reviewing the photographs from the afternoon garden session. The images glowed on her computer screen, each one telling its own story of Charlotte's joy and natural grace. As she scrolled through them, Catherine felt a familiar conflict between her instinct to keep these precious moments private and her understanding of the public's genuine affection for her children. William joined her after finishing his own evening duties, settling into the chair beside her desk to look at the photographs together. His smile was immediate and warm as he saw the images of Charlotte captured in such natural, joyful moments. They spent nearly an hour going through the photos together, reliving the afternoon through Catherine's skilled photography and marveling at how perfectly Charlotte's personality had been captured. The standout image was obvious to both of them immediately. The photograph of Charlotte reaching for the climbing rose, with the golden backlighting creating an almost ethereal glow around her, was extraordinary. But it wasn't just technically beautiful. It captured something essential about their daughter's spirit that they both recognized and loved. There was joy, wonder, confidence, and a kind of natural grace that seemed to embody everything they hoped Charlotte would carry with her throughout her life. Catherine had learned through years of experience that sharing photographs of their children was never a decision to be made lightly. Every image released to the public became part of the permanent record of their children's lives, studied and analyzed by people around the world. The responsibility of choosing what moments to share with the public weighed heavily on both parents, especially when the photographs were as beautiful and personal as these garden images. But there was something about this particular photograph that felt different. Unlike formal portraits or official family photos, this image captured Charlotte simply being herself, radiating the kind of authentic happiness that seemed to transcend royal protocol and public expectations. Catherine found herself thinking that perhaps this was exactly the kind of image the world needed to see, not another carefully staged royal photograph, but a genuine moment of childhood joy. The decision-making process involved careful consideration of multiple factors. Catherine and William had always been protective of their children's privacy, believing strongly that George, Charlotte, and Louis should have as normal a childhood as possible, despite their extraordinary circumstances. Every public appearance and every shared photograph had to be balanced against this primary goal of preserving their children's innocence and privacy. However, they also recognized that the public's genuine affection for their family created opportunities to share positive messages and authentic moments that could bring joy to people around the world. Some of Catherine's previous photographs of their children had been met with overwhelmingly positive responses, with many people expressing gratitude for these glimpses into the more personal side of royal family life. As Catherine continued to study the Rose Garden photograph, she found herself thinking about the messages it conveyed. Here was a young girl completely absorbed in the beauty of nature, approaching the world with curiosity and wonder, displaying the kind of authentic joy that had become increasingly rare in public life. There was nothing artificial or manufactured about Charlotte's expression. It was simply genuine happiness, captured in a moment of pure childhood wonder. William pointed out that the photograph also showcased the gardens at Adelaide Cottage in their full spring glory, which might encourage others to appreciate and preserve natural beauty. Charlotte's obvious love for flowers and nature reflected values that both parents hoped to instill in all their children: respect for the environment, appreciation for simple pleasures, and the importance of finding joy in everyday moments. The technical quality of the photograph was also exceptional. Catherine's skills as a photographer had developed significantly over the years, and this image demonstrated her ability to capture not just beautiful compositions, but meaningful moments. The lighting, the natural setting, and Charlotte's authentic expression had combined to create something that was both artistically accomplished and emotionally resonant. After much discussion and consideration, Catherine and William began to feel that this photograph represented something important that they wanted to share with the world. It wasn't about promoting the royal family or fulfilling public relations objectives. Instead, it was about sharing a moment of genuine joy and beauty that might bring happiness to others and remind everyone of the importance of cherishing simple, authentic moments. The conversation extended over several days as they considered the implications of sharing such a personal photograph. They consulted with their communications team about the best way to share the image if they decided to do so, but ultimately the decision remained a deeply personal one, based on their instincts as parents and their understanding of what message they wanted to convey. Catherine found herself returning to look at the photograph repeatedly over those few days. Each time, she was struck anew by how perfectly it captured Charlotte's essence at this particular moment in her life. There was something timeless about the image that suggested it would remain beautiful and meaningful long after this specific moment had passed into memory. The decision crystallized when Catherine realized that her hesitation wasn't really about whether the photograph was appropriate to share, but about her own attachment to keeping this beautiful moment private. She understood that some of the most powerful gifts come from sharing beauty and joy with others, even when it means giving up the exclusivity of a private moment. William supported Catherine's growing inclination to share the photograph, recognizing that it represented the best of what they hoped to teach their children about grace, authenticity, and finding joy in simple moments.
They agreed that if they were going to share this image, they would do so in a way that honored both Charlotte's privacy and the genuine nature of the moment it captured.
The final factor in their decision was considering how Charlotte herself might feel about the photograph being shared. While she was too young to fully understand the implications of having her image seen by people around the world, they believed she would be proud of how beautiful and authentic she appeared in the photograph. It showed her at her best, while still being completely genuine, a balance that reflected their hopes for how she would navigate public life as she grew older. As Catherine prepared to make the final decision about sharing the photograph, she felt confident that they were choosing to share something that would bring joy to others without compromising their values or their children's well-being. The image represented the best of childhood, family life, and authentic moments of happiness that transcend royal titles and public expectations. When Catherine finally clicked share on the carefully chosen photograph that Tuesday morning, she had no idea she was about to create one of the most heartwarming viral moments of the year. The image appeared on the official social media accounts of the Prince and Princess of Wales at exactly 10:30 a.m., accompanied by a simple, heartfelt caption that Catherine had crafted herself. Finding joy in the simple beauty of nature. Charlotte exploring our garden this spring. Within minutes of the post going live, the response began to build. The first few comments were from royal fans who religiously followed the family's social media accounts, but soon the photograph began attracting attention from a much broader audience. There was something about Charlotte's radiant expression and the beautiful natural setting that seemed to resonate with people far beyond typical royal watchers. The photograph's appeal transcended demographic boundaries in a way that surprised even the most experienced royal communications experts. Parents saw their own children's wonder reflected in Charlotte's expression. Grandparents were reminded of precious moments with their grandchildren. Garden enthusiasts admired both Charlotte's obvious love of flowers and the beautiful setting that framed her joy. Photography lovers appreciated the technical skill and artistic composition that Catherine had achieved. Within the first hour, the post had received thousands of likes and hundreds of comments, all overwhelmingly positive. People were sharing the image with friends and family, not because it was royal news, but because it captured something universally appealing about childhood joy and natural beauty. Comments poured in from around the world in multiple languages, all expressing similar sentiments about the photograph's ability to bring smiles and warm feelings. News organizations quickly picked up the story, but their coverage focused not on royal protocol or formal announcements, but on the genuine happiness the photograph was bringing to people online. Headlines spoke of heartwarming moments, authentic joy, and the power of simple happiness. The coverage was refreshingly positive, focusing on the emotional impact of the image rather than analyzing royal family dynamics or future implications. Catherine monitored the response throughout the day with a mixture of amazement and gratitude. She had hoped the photograph would bring some joy to people, but she hadn't anticipated the scale of the positive response. Comments came from parents sharing how the image reminded them to appreciate similar moments with their own children, from elderly people who said Charlotte's smile had brightened their day, and from young people who expressed admiration for Charlotte's natural confidence and grace. The viral nature of the photograph spread was driven entirely by genuine emotional response rather than manufactured publicity or strategic marketing. People were sharing it because it made them happy, because it reminded them of beautiful moments in their own lives, or because they wanted to spread that feeling of joy to others. This organic sharing created a ripple effect that carried the image much further than any official publicity campaign could have achieved. International media picked up the story, but the coverage remained focused on the positive emotional impact rather than typical royal analysis. News anchors smiled genuinely as they shared the photograph during broadcasts, often commenting on how it had brightened their own day. The image appeared in lifestyle segments, parenting features, and even photography tutorials examining Catherine's skilled technique in capturing such a perfect moment. Social media platforms saw the photograph shared across different networks as people moved it from official royal accounts to their own personal feeds. Instagram users created artistic collages featuring the image alongside their own garden photographs. Twitter users shared it with captions about finding joy in simple moments. Facebook saw it shared in family groups and parenting communities where it sparked discussions about childhood, nature, and the importance of documenting precious moments. The response from fellow parents was particularly touching. Many shared stories of their own experiences photographing their children in gardens, of moments when they had captured similar expressions of wonder and joy, or of how Charlotte's obvious happiness reminded them to slow down and appreciate similar moments in their own families. Parent bloggers wrote posts inspired by the photograph about the importance of letting children explore nature and find their own sources of joy. Photography enthusiasts analyzed the technical aspects of the image, praising Catherine's use of natural lighting, her composition skills, and her ability to capture authentic emotion. Photography educators used the image as an example of how the best portraits happen when subjects forget about the camera entirely. Camera clubs shared it as inspiration for capturing genuine moments rather than posed shots. Garden lovers and horticulture enthusiasts focused on Charlotte's obvious appreciation for flowers and natural beauty. Garden centers reported increased interest in climbing roses similar to those featured in the photograph. Parenting groups discussed the importance of encouraging children's connections with nature and providing opportunities for unstructured outdoor exploration. The sustained positive response continued for days as the photograph reached new audiences through various forms of sharing and media coverage. Unlike many viral moments that flame out quickly, this image seemed to have staying power because it represented something timeless and universally appealing. The joy captured in Charlotte's expression didn't diminish with repeated viewing. If anything, people seemed to find new details to appreciate each time they looked at it. Celebrity responses added another layer to the viral phenomenon, but even famous commentators focused on the emotional impact of the image rather than its royal connections. Actresses spoke about how the photograph reminded them of their own daughters. Musicians shared it as inspiration for finding beauty in simple moments. Authors used it as an example of how a single image could tell a complete story about joy, family, and authentic happiness. Catherine found herself deeply moved by the response, particularly by comments from people who said the photograph had encouraged them to spend more time outdoors with their own children, or had reminded them to look for moments of beauty in their daily lives. These responses confirmed her instinct that sharing this authentic moment had been the right decision, creating positive ripples that extended far beyond simple royal news. The viral success of Charlotte's photograph demonstrated something important about what people truly wanted to see from public figures. Not perfection or artificial moments, but authentic glimpses of real joy and genuine family life. In an increasingly digital world filled with carefully curated images and manufactured moments, Charlotte's natural happiness represented something rare and precious that people instinctively recognized and treasured. The ripple effects of Charlotte's photograph continued to spread far beyond anyone's initial expectations, touching hearts in the most unexpected places and creating connections between people who had never met but shared a common appreciation for authentic joy. As the days passed, stories began emerging from around the world about how this single image had impacted real people's lives in meaningful ways. In a children's hospital in London, nurses reported that patients' faces lit up when they saw Charlotte's photograph during their daily tablet time. The image had been shared in several pediatric wards' social media groups, and young patients connected with Charlotte's obvious happiness despite their own challenging circumstances. One 8-year-old patient with leukemia told her nurse that seeing Charlotte so happy in the garden made her excited to get well enough to play outside again. The photograph became a symbol of hope and normalcy for children dealing with serious medical challenges. Halfway around the world in Australia, a grandmother named Margaret posted on social media about how Charlotte's photograph had inspired her to plant a new flower garden with her 6-year-old granddaughter. Margaret wrote about how they had spent an entire weekend choosing flowers and planning their garden layout, with her granddaughter insisting they needed climbing roses just like Princess Charlotte's. The post included photos of their gardening adventure, showing the same kind of intergenerational joy that many people felt when looking at Charlotte's image. Teachers in primary schools across the United Kingdom began incorporating the photograph into lessons about nature, photography, and finding happiness in simple moments. Art teachers used it as inspiration for drawing and painting exercises, encouraging students to capture their own moments of joy. Science teachers discussed the flowers visible in the background, leading to lessons about plant biology and garden ecosystems. English teachers used it as a writing prompt, asking students to describe moments when they had felt the same kind of happiness Charlotte displayed. The photograph's impact extended into unexpected professional circles as well. Corporate wellness programs began using Charlotte's image in presentations about work-life balance and the importance of finding joy outside of professional responsibilities. Mental health advocates shared it as an example of pure, uncomplicated happiness that people could aspire to experience in their own lives, regardless of their circumstances. Catherine began receiving letters from around the world sharing personal stories about how the photograph had affected people. A widow in Canada wrote about how Charlotte's smile had been the first thing to make her truly happy since her husband's passing 6 months earlier. A military family in Germany shared how they had used the photograph to talk with their young children about finding beautiful moments even when Daddy was deployed overseas. A teacher in Japan wrote about using the image to help her English language students practice describing emotions and natural beauty. The photograph's influence on parenting conversations was particularly profound. Parenting blogs and magazines featured articles inspired by Charlotte's obvious joy, discussing the importance of unstructured outdoor play and allowing children to develop their own relationships with nature. Child development experts pointed to the image as an example of confident, authentic childhood expression that resulted from secure attachment and supportive family environments. Photography communities worldwide embraced the image as a masterclass in capturing authentic emotion. Catherine received requests from photography organizations to discuss her techniques, though she politely declined most formal speaking engagements. However, the photograph appeared in numerous photography tutorials and workshops as an example of how technical skill combined with emotional sensitivity could create truly powerful images. The gardening community's response was equally enthusiastic and enduring. Garden centers reported sustained increased interest in climbing roses and cottage garden designs inspired by the setting of Charlotte's photograph. Horticultural societies shared the image in their newsletters and social media accounts, using it to promote the joy and therapeutic benefits of gardening. Children's garden programs saw increased enrollment as parents sought to provide their own children with similar opportunities to explore and enjoy nature. International royal watchers noted that this photograph had achieved something unique in royal public relations. It had created genuine global affection for Charlotte as an individual rather than simply as a royal figure. Comments and shares came from people who typically had no interest in royal family news but were drawn to Charlotte's authentic happiness. This organic connection suggested that Charlotte's natural personality was already shining through in ways that would serve her well throughout her life in the public eye. The sustained positive response also demonstrated the power of authentic family moments in an increasingly artificial digital landscape. Media analysts noted that in an era of carefully curated social media presence and manufactured viral content, Charlotte's genuine expression of joy had cut through the noise to create real emotional connections with people worldwide. The photograph succeeded precisely because it wasn't trying to sell anything or promote any agenda beyond sharing a beautiful moment. As weeks passed, the photograph continued to appear in new contexts and inspire new conversations. It was featured in exhibition proposals about contemporary royal portraiture, referenced in academic papers about childhood development and media representation,
and included in cultural discussions about the role of authentic moments in public life.
Art students analyzed its composition and emotional impact in their coursework, while sociology students examined its viral spread as a case study in organic content sharing. Catherine herself was deeply moved by the ongoing response, particularly by stories of how the photograph had encouraged families to spend more time together outdoors, or had brought comfort to people during difficult times. She realized that sharing this single moment had created something much larger than a royal photograph. It had become a symbol of childhood joy, family love, and the universal human appreciation for authentic happiness. The lasting impact of Charlotte's garden photograph extended far beyond its initial viral moment to create ongoing positive influences in people's daily lives. Parents reported being more intentional about capturing authentic moments with their own children. Teachers incorporated discussions of joy and nature into their lesson plans, and communities organized more outdoor family activities, inspired by the simple pleasure Charlotte had taken in exploring her garden. Most significantly, the photograph served as a reminder that in a complex world filled with challenges and uncertainties, there remained space for simple, pure moments of happiness. Charlotte's radiant smile and obvious delight in the beauty around her offered hope and inspiration to people of all ages, proving that sometimes the most powerful messages are conveyed not through words or grand gestures, but through the authentic expression of a child's joy captured in a single, perfect moment.